The 63-year-old janitor had been invisible to everyone in Murphy's Tavern for years, quietly mopping floors, while leather-clad bikers drank and fought around him, until the night his sleeve rolled up just enough to reveal the tattoo that made 3 hardened Hell's Angels drop to their knees and call him Godfather. What he had inked on his weathered skin told a story so powerful that it instantly transformed him from forgotten old man to living legend in the eyes of the most feared motorcycle club in America. But what could possibly be tattooed on a humble cleaner's arm that would command such instant respect from men who bow to no one? The amber glow of neon beer signs cuts through the thick haze of cigarette smoke hanging in Murphy's Tavern, where the jukebox hums old rock ballads and the smell of spilled whiskey mingles with grease and exhaust fumes that seems permanently embedded in the wooden walls and cracked vinyl stools. Frank Martinez moves methodically between the sticky tables, his weathered hands gripping a mop that's seen better days. The cotton strands darkened from years of cleaning up after bikers, drifters, and anyone else looking to forget their troubles in a glass of amber liquid that burns going down and leaves only temporary comfort in its wake. At 63, his back aches with every twist of the mop, vertebrae grinding against each other like old machinery in need of oil, but his eyes remain sharp and alert, constantly scanning the room with the practiced vigilance of someone who's learned that trouble can erupt faster than a match hitting gasoline in a place where emotions run as hot as motorcycle engines. The sleeves of his faded work shirt are rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms marked by time and shadows, though most patrons never look long enough to notice what lies hidden beneath the grime and dim lighting that keeps secrets as well as any vault. Tonight, the familiar routine feels different somehow, charged with an electricity that makes the hair on his arms stand up like antennae, picking up signals from some distant storm, though he can't quite place why his instincts are screaming warnings that his conscious mind hasn't yet processed. The old ceiling fan squeaks with each labored rotation, stirring the smoky air and casting shifting shadows across the beer-stained floorboards that Frank has mopped clean thousands of times, each plank bearing witness to conversations, fights, and confessions that have played out in this sanctuary for the lost and forgotten. "Another round over here, Frank," calls out Jimmy, a regular who's been nursing the same beer for an hour, his voice slurred but carrying the genuine affection of someone who appreciates consistency in an inconsistent world. Frank nods silently, setting his mop against the bar with the careful precision of someone who takes pride in simple tasks done well, reaching for a fresh bottle from the cooler that hums like a mechanical heartbeat beneath the sounds of conversation and clinking glass. The condensation from the cold bottle meets his warm palm, a small sensation that grounds him in the present moment, even as his mind drifts to memories that feel both distant and immediate, like photographs, viewed through frosted glass, that blur the edges but preserve the essential truth of what was. As he returns to his cleaning, Frank's shirt sleeve catches on the edge of a table scarred by decades of beer bottles and cigarette burns, pulling the fabric up his forearm just enough to reveal a glimpse of intricate black ink, detailed lines and curves that speak of artistry and meaning far beyond simple decoration, telling stories that most people wouldn't survive once, let alone live to remember with such vivid detail. The tattoo disappears again as he adjusts his sleeve with practiced nonchalance, but not before the bartender, Mickey, catches sight of it and pauses mid-pour, his eyes narrowing with the curiosity of someone who recognizes that some marks on human skin carry weight far beyond their apparent simplicity. Outside, the distant rumble of motorcycle engines grows louder, approaching like rolling thunder through the night. The heavy wooden door crashes open with enough force to rattle the beer bottles behind the bar, sending a cold draft cutting through the warm, smoky atmosphere, as 3 figures fill the doorway like storm clouds blocking out the streetlight. Tank Morrison steps in first, his massive frame casting a shadow that seems to swallow half the room, followed by a wiry man, with serpent tattoos coiling up his neck, snake, his lieutenant, and a younger prospect, whose nervous energy radiates from every fidgeting movement. Their cuts, sleeveless denim vests adorned with patches and insignia, announce their presence like battle flags, the Death's Head logo, and Hell's Angels rocker, demanding immediate attention and respect from everyone in Murphy's Tavern. Tank's eyes sweep the room, with the cold calculation of a predator assessing territory, his boots echoing against the weathered planks. As conversations die mid-sentence, and patrons suddenly find their drinks infinitely more interesting than making eye contact with the newcomers. "Which one of you sorry bastards has been talking to the cops?" Tank's voice booms across the suddenly silent bar, his words carrying the weight of accusation and the promise of violence. Frank continues mopping near the back corner, his movements steady and deliberate, even as tension thickens the air like fog. Years of experience having taught him that sometimes invisibility is the greatest survival skill. The bartender Mickey's hand trembles slightly as he sets down a glass, the soft clink seeming impossibly loud in the heavy silence, while Jimmy the regular slides his beer closer to his chest, as if it might provide some protection from the storm that's just walked through the door. "Nobody? Got nothing to say?" Snake adds, his voice a low growl, as he scans the faces of patrons who suddenly seem fascinated by the grain patterns in their wooden tables. Tank's gaze finally settles on Frank, the only person in the room still moving, still working as if nothing has changed, and something about this quiet defiance sparks his anger like gasoline meeting flame. "You," Tank growls, his thick finger stabbing through the smoky air toward Frank. "Old man, you think you're too good to answer when I'm talking?" Frank's heart hammers against his ribs with the familiar rhythm of danger, but he sets down his mop with hands that remain steady. Despite the adrenaline flooding his system, decades of facing down threats, having taught him that showing fear only feeds the beast. As he turns to face the mountain of leather and muscle bearing down on him, Frank's work shirt pulls slightly against his shoulders, the fabric straining just enough to hint at the stories written in ink beneath. Stories that chronicle battles fought in jungles half a world away, and on highways that stretch across America like scars on the landscape. The distance between Frank and Tank seems to shrink with each heavy footstep, the confrontation building, like pressure in a boiler, while the other patrons hold their breath and wait for the explosion that seems inevitable in the charged atmosphere of Murphy's Tavern, where secrets live in the shadows, and the past has a way of demanding recognition when you least expect it. Frank approaches with the measured stride of someone who has walked toward danger more times than he cares to count, his work boots making soft, scuffing sounds against the time-worn boards as Tank's massive presence looms before him like a mountain of leather and fury. The air between them crackles with tension so thick it seems to have weight, pressing down on every soul in Murphy's Tavern as they watch this collision of worlds about to unfold. "I asked you a question, old man." Tank snarls, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carries more menace than his earlier shouts, his eyes blazing with the kind of rage that has sent grown men running for cover. Frank stops just arm's length away, close enough to smell the engine grease and highway dust that clings to Tank's cut, close enough to see the network of scars that map violent encounters across the biker's knuckles and knuckles. "I heard you," Frank says quietly, his voice steady as bedrock, despite the hurricane of violence swirling around him. "But I mind my own business and suggest you do the same." The words hang in the smoky air like a challenge thrown down between gunfighters, and Tank's face darkens to the color of storm clouds as his massive hands clench into fists that look capable of crushing bone. As Tank raises his arm to deliver what promises to be a devastating blow, Frank instinctively lifts his own arm to block, the sudden movement causing his work shirt sleeve to ride up his forearm and expose what lies beneath the fabric, intricate black ink that catches the warm crimson light from the neon signs and transforms the dingy bar into something approaching sacred ground. Tank's fist freezes mid-swing as his eyes lock onto the revealed tattoo, his pupils dilating as he processes what he's seeing through the haze of adrenaline and anger. The detailed artwork sprawls across Frank's weathered skin, like a masterpiece, painted in flesh and memory. The unmistakable wings and skull of a Vietnam-era death's head insignia, surrounded by names and dates that tell stories of brotherhood forged in jungle, mud, and enemy fire, crowned by the Gothic letters spelling out Devil's Disciples MC in script so precise it seems to pulse with life. Jesus Christ. Tank breathes, his voice barely above a whisper, as Tank's imposing frame begins to tremble, not with rage now, but with something approaching reverence. Your Phantom Frank Martinez. The name falls from his lips like a prayer, carrying with it decades of legend and whispered stories told around campfires and in clubhouses across the country. The transformation ripples through the bar like a stone thrown into still water. As Snake and the prospect catch sight of the revealed ink, their aggressive postures melting into slack-jawed amazement as they recognize the markings of a legend they thought was myth. Frank slowly rolls up both sleeves, revealing arms that serve as living museums, chronicling 2 tours in Vietnam, 15 years as a founding member of the Devil's Disciples MC, and battles fought both overseas and on American highways. Each piece of ink telling stories that most men wouldn't survive once, let alone live to remember. The silence stretches taut as a wire, until Tank, this intimidating force of nature, who commands respect through fear and violence, drops to one knee with a heavy thud that echoes through Murphy's Tavern like thunder, his heavy head bowed, in genuine reverence, as Snake and the prospect follow suit, their voices joining in unison to speak a single word that transforms everything: Godfather. For a long moment, the only sound is the distant hum of the jukebox, as if the entire universe has paused to witness this moment of recognition. The golden light filtering through Murphy's dusty windows seems to glow brighter now, casting Frank in an almost ethereal radiance as he stands transformed from invisible janitor to living legend, his gnarled hands reaching down to rest gently on Tank's broad shoulders with the grace of someone who has always understood that true power lies not in intimidation, but in the quiet dignity earned through sacrifice and service. Rise up, brother, Frank says softly, his words heavy with years of experience and the wisdom of a man who has walked through hell and emerged not bitter, but deeply compassionate. His voice lifting Tank to his feet as easily as if the mountain of muscle and leather weighed nothing at all. The reverence in the room is palpable, electric. As other patrons begin to understand, they're witnessing something far beyond a simple barroom encounter. They're seeing history made flesh, legend walking among them in work boots and a faded shirt. Tank's eyes glisten with moisture. He would never allow anyone else to see, as he struggles to find words adequate for the moment, his voice rough with emotion as he speaks. My old man used to tell me stories about Phantom Frank Martinez, about the Devil's Disciples, about what you guys did for veterans, coming home to a country that spat on them, he says. His usual commanding tone replaced by something humble and deeply respectful. I never thought I'd actually meet you. Never thought you were even still alive. Frank's weathered face creases into a gentle smile that transforms his entire appearance, revealing glimpses of the younger man he once was. The warrior who rode highways like rivers of freedom and fought battles that most people couldn't even imagine. I clean floors now because honest work honors the brothers we lost, Frank explains, his words carrying the profound simplicity of someone who has found peace in purpose. Every night I mop these floors, I remember Jimmy Kowalski, who died in Saigon, Bobby Chen, who overdosed in San Francisco, Mike Thompson, who wrapped his bike around a tree outside of Denver. This work, this simple work, it keeps their memory alive and keeps my hands busy so my heart can heal. The confession hangs in the air like incense, sacred and cleansing, as Tank nods with understanding that comes from his own losses, his own struggles to find meaning, In a world that often seems determined to crush the spirits of those who dare to live authentically. As Tank and his men prepare to leave, each one approaches Frank with the solemnity of pilgrims touching a shrine, their rough hands gentle as they touch their hearts and bow their heads in respect that transcends club colors and territorial boundaries. If you ever need anything, Godfather, anything at all, you call this number, Tank says, pressing a worn business card into Frank's palm, his voice thick with emotion and genuine gratitude for this unexpected encounter with living history. The heavy door swings shut behind them, with a soft thud that seems to seal something sacred that happened in Murphy's Tavern tonight. Leaving Frank alone with his mop and bucket, as the other patrons slowly return to their conversations, though their glances toward him now carry newfound respect and wonder. Frank picks up his mop once more, the familiar weight comfortable in his hands as he returns to his work, the neon lights casting long shadows across the floor that somehow seem less lonely now, less forgotten. The echo of his past has finally been acknowledged, but it doesn't overshadow the simple pride he takes in making the world a little cleaner, a little better, one splash of soapy water at a time. In the flickering neon glow of Murphy's Tavern, surrounded by the gentle hum of the jukebox and the soft murmur of conversations, Frank Martinez continues his quiet work, carrying within him the stories of brotherhood and sacrifice that will outlive them all. His tattooed arms moving with the rhythm of a man who has found peace in the knowledge that some legends are worth living and some services are worth performing, whether anyone is watching or not.